It's only a few games in, but Mick Cronin is slowly starting to figure out what his roster is going to look like for the rest of the season.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Where we get started today, we're kind of analyzing where this UCLA basketball team is, right? They've got a 2-1 record after an absolute beatdown of Boston. They could have looked better, could have played sharper. Cronin even talked to the media and gave some insight into what the roster is looking like heading in for the rest of the season. Okay, let's talk about it. What is UCLA going to look like here in 24 to 25? Well, now that there's been a few games under our belt, we can finally see, who does Mick Cronin trust initially? Well, it's Dylan Andrews as the one. Even though Cronin really likes Skyy Clark as a one, he started as the point guard when Andrews was out. That's the one, that's the two. Kobe Johnson at the three. And then you've got Bilodeau and Eric Daly Jr. manning the low post spots, all right? And whether UCLA can get some defensive wizardry out of Bilodeau to go along with his offensive prowess, whether they can keep Daly Jr. on the floor as a mismatch for the opposition, if he stays out of foul trouble, then the Bruins will have something cooking. But those are the guys Cronin has set aside based on the opponents he's played in the first three games. Despite New Mexico having a lot of size in that starting lineup, he still went small somewhat with that starting lineup. As we know, Cronin, when he believes Mara is ready, can trot out a 7'3" Spaniard and be like, hey, we're much bigger, when he can get that conditioning after the offseason foot injury that he's slowly nursed back to health. He's still a 10 to 15-minute guy. And he still has to earn more minutes than that. But the Bruins should, I think, in every game, unless the game does not dictate more than 5 minutes for some reason for Mara, use him as a size mismatch, because he will be for almost every opponent they face this year, right? And if he can get stronger, bully the low post, man himself on the block, be an anchor defensively, that's somebody UCLA can use. And then they had the uber athletic William Kyle III, who I thought coming into the season would be that athletic five-man, but just isn't there offensively enough for the Bruins to utilize him, and is still growing and transitioning into this day and age, right? The difference between, say, a Daly Jr. and a William Kyle III playing is one was the true freshman playing at the Power 4, Power 5 school at the time, Oklahoma State, now Power 4, and then you had William Kyle, who dominated at South Dakota State, but that transition, right, 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", right, there's the difference, and Cronin's going to lean on what he believes will perform, and that's where he's going with Daly Jr., who can rebound, who can shoot a little bit, and can play some defense as a versatile defender. He can go guard multiple positions. What else does UCLA have? Cronin wants Mac as that sixth man off the bench. And with Andrews not starting in that game versus Boston, he went to what I thought was a surprise, Stefanovic as the starting two guard in that lineup. I thought he might go Trent Perry. It looks like Mick Cronin is sticking away from young freshmen who are inexperienced immediately in the starting lineup, or just youngsters in general who are raw products. Hence, that's why we see Devin Williams. Cronin said before the season, we're expecting him to redshirt. We're expecting Brandon Williams, a guy who started quite a few games in his true freshman year, to redshirt in his sophomore year. And then the news comes out, Cronin saying this, that he expects Eric Franey to redshirt, a guy who was the first commit in this class of 24, and he's the one that has to redshirt. And he looked good in those Rico's runs from what I was watching. It's just there's such a logjam in the backcourt. I wonder, how is Cronin going to be able to keep all these guys? And he thinks, and I think most coaches would think, yeah, this is probably going to be a problem for another day. All right, we're here to win now. And if you can get past your ego and learn that you're probably not going to play, or you can develop, but you're not going to play right away, barring some injury or barring some super change of circumstances, you're not going to play for this first year, and you might not play your second year at UCLA. He could still be a redshirt freshman. Now, what do I mean by that? Remember, Dylan Andrews, another year of eligibility after this. Skyy Clark, same thing. Dominic Harris, one of the best three-point shooters, couldn't even get on the court for UCLA against New Mexico. That confidence doesn't look like it's there yet for the transfer sharpshooter, former LMU Lion, former Gonzaga Bulldog, turned UCLA Bruin at his third stop. He was 0 for 6 against Boston. And I think maybe Cronin at some point will let him be as an unleashed sniper from deep. It just hasn't translated after he took 6 shots against Boston. That is Dominic Harris, the three-point shooter Cronin wants and needs to fill out this roster as a guy. Hey, you're down 10 against New Mexico. You're not playing well. You bring him off the bench, and he shoots you back into the game that you have no business being in, but his lights-out shooting statistically would be that guy you want to bring off the bench. But Cronin has not given him that leeway, and that confidence isn't there. You can see the guys who have been there, mostly, especially the transfers who were there much earlier than Harris, through no fault of his own, just how schooling had to translate for him going through summer to transfer to UCLA. They are earning minutes. They're all in the starting lineup and are getting a lot more minutes. Now, the backcourt for UCLA is one of the toughest backcourts to get any minutes in the country. It's one of the deepest, and there's so many different talented guys. Perry is the backup one, and he is a good point guard. I thought you keep him, you start him at the one if Dylan Andrews is out, and you put Skyy Clark as the 2, or you mix with Mack and Mack and then Skyy Clark. That's not what Cronin did in the starting lineup. He has Mack clearly as that 6th man of the year role. Perry to come give minutes off the bench and not put too much on his plate early in this season until he earns more of it. Dylan Andrews is the one, and if he needs to flip-flop the lineup, Stefanovic is that Swiss Army knife, although I guess you should say Serbian Army knife. Who knows? You got Lazar Stefanovic coming in who can play different roles, right? Whether it's the 3 to spell minutes for Johnson, come in as the 2, maybe play as a 4 for some crazy reason in this year. But Stefanovic is that guy that might go from a 7 to 8, maybe 10, 15-minute game to go play 29 minutes or something based on a UCLA injury, or who Cronin trusts in his rotation to start a game and not just turn it over 15 times, because UCLA has struggled in the first halves of games to keep the basketball moving without turning it over. Cronin, I believe I saw the quote to the media was, yeah, if we're going to pass it a lot as a team, be an unselfish team, we'll turn it over, which is true, but a good passing team, a crisp, a team that plays offensive basketball really well, also doesn't necessarily turn it over a lot. It helps when you have a veteran point guard that Dylan Andrews is slowly maturing into, and whatever it's a transfer, if it's a true freshman, whether it's a Perry or a Clark, those guys can grow into those roles. That's not what it's looking like now. Now, I wonder, between Devin, Brandon, Williams, and then you've got Eric Freeney redshirting, that's a lot of talent that I was wondering, how is UCLA going to mix and match 14 guys? Well, Cronin said, hey, you're going to have to redshirt, or you can burn, it's not what he's saying, but the guy can make their decision. And now when they're playing these blowout games, you're going to see some of the starting 5 going out there getting minutes when they're up 30, and they're not running the score. They just have an equally solid player on the court as they do off the court with what they have available in their 9 to 10, 11-man rotation at this moment. So right now, UCLA with Bilodeau, solid post. Daly Jr., he started every game. Dylan Andrews, we'll see how long this groin is an issue. Does he start Friday? Is he a day-to-day? We'll find out. Don't have a lot of information. Kobe Johnson, he is going to start, and unless he does something incredibly dumb, like turn the ball over 10 times in a game, he is going to be Mick Cronin's favorite defensive weapon to utilize, whether it's an on-ball or an off-ball defender, how UCLA wants to utilize him as a defensive weapon to neutralize the opposition's offensive attack. Mack seems like he's going to play 20 minutes off the bench and just be a wrecking ball to get to the hole, get free throws, and take limited shots, but at a higher, more efficient rate this year. Perry, he's becoming one of my favorite newer Bruins in these early couple of games, has played confidently, played smooth, in a guy where I think I remember hearing when they were talking on a radio show recently, like, all right, yeah, you got Perry, the only true Bruin. He was somebody who's committed to go elsewhere, right? So, or what was it, Josh Lewin, who I forget what it was. Almost every UCLA player that's a newcomer was destined elsewhere or was committed elsewhere, and they finally, found their way to Westwood. This is a team that still might take some time to develop, and they won't play a team that's decent until they go play a Washington or an Oregon. And Oregon nearly lost at home to Portland. And I think Washington just lost to somebody. So a real true test of absolute talent won't come until mid-December when they have the games that we're going to hear as a broken record. Arizona, North Carolina, Gonzaga, all in the 3 out of 4 game stretch. But even then, those 2 Big Ten games early will still be a key driver to UCLA's Big Ten success. But until then, it'll be cupcake, blow out a candle, happy birthday, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. It just be, should be easy to manage basketball games for Mick Cronin. Just a matter of, do they look better? Are they sharper? As we saw completely different energy shift from New Mexico to Boston. Now, it's easy to do that against a shorthanded mid-major. Can they do that when they get punched in the mouth when the team comes out much better than Boston did offensively? And how they show up like maybe New Mexico did on the defensive end. But until then, UCLA is shaping into a roster that can be molded and changed as the games go by. But now we know these 3 are redshirting, and the rest of the guys are just vying for minutes and roles on this year's team. And just we're waiting for some guys to jump and take a role and dominate. So then Mick Cronin can just be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we can adapt against big, against small. We're down 10, we're up 10. Cronin is still waiting to build that lineup that he can trust guys in certain roles. It's not set, but now he knows the set guys who will be available to him this year. Next, we'll talk a little UCLA versus Washington on the Locked On UCLA podcast. Go check out Game Time. You're looking to go get an event, right? You're like, it's this weekend, right? It's pre-Thanksgiving. Maybe you're looking to do something with the family during the holidays. You're like, maybe it's a certain show that you want to go see. Maybe it's musical. Maybe it's a comedy. Maybe it's some theater event. Or you're like, hey, I'm looking to go see any and every sporting event possible, whether I'm in this spot in Los Angeles, maybe across the country. Where do you go? You go to Game Time. Game Time picks, filters out the fluff, and you can get zone deals. So if you want a good spot, maybe it's a big-time event, 2 big-time teams like I was able to go see in the Dodgers postseason. A zone deal saved me a lot of money on Game Time. It really did. It saved me quite a bit of money. And I was like, man, that's a better deal than everything else being offered around here. And it saved me a lot of money. Check out Game Time. They've got the best customer service, the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So what does this UCLA versus Washington matchup bring us? Well, it's a unique one, right? I just wonder how the Bruins are going to show up. It's the 6th straight road game where I'm expecting a good crowd. Shouldn't be empty, although that's up to the Washington Husky fans. It's a short week. It's a Friday night. It's supposed to be a blackout, a senior night. They're heading into their Oregon game in a couple weeks. This is the last time for these Husky fans to cheer on their beloved UW football team this year. And if they win, they're going to a bowl, which is huge for Jed Fish. All right, that's a huge thing. So I'm expecting another rowdy crowd for a Washington team that has generally played pretty well at home. I think they've won 19 straight home games. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the Michael Penix Jr.'s of the world and the Kalen DeBoers, but they have been pretty dominant at home in recent years, and the crowd has felt like it. Even if they've won close, even if they've won big. But Washington has not beaten UCLA in quite a few years because the Bruins beat them in 22 and handled the one time they faced Michael Penix Jr. Sorry, Oregon fans. I don't know how you failed, but they failed in every big game against Washington the last few years. Maybe they do this year. What can the Bruins do? I'm wondering how this Washington team is going to handle the quarterback situation. After, recording our Big Ten squad segment, I think you'll see it in a couple of days. It was unique to hear what Roman had to say, the Locked On Washington host, Locked On Huskies, where they're going to play maybe a couple quarterbacks, right? It's not just Will Rogers, who comes in as that transfer quarterback, was maybe going to leave after the coaching switch and then stayed. I still think Washington has a slight edge at the quarterback position, but they're playing 2 quarterbacks it might lean itself more towards a mistake. And the way this Washington's game's kind of feeling like to me, it's reminding me a little bit of last year's UCLA Oregon State. Now, I think both these quarterbacks are much better than DJU, who's currently now at Florida State. But that's how Jonathan Smith, current Michigan State head coach, coached last year's Oregon State team. They had a 2 QB system, 1-2, few snaps for one, which is now a starting quarterback at Michigan State. And then DJU would be the starter. And the way Roman was talking about it gives me that inkling that Washington has an opportunity. They might do something similar. And the Bruins last year kind of struggled against it. Now, Oregon State was able to run the ball a little bit more than UCLA was accustomed to giving up. It was a road game. Things went awry after they threw another pick six, right? That was the big debate between, is it Dante Moore? Is it Garbers? And then really after that game is when we saw Garbers take over, dominate Stanford, and lead the Bruins into clinching and making sure they had a 8-win year as opposed to what could have been a 6-win year if they kept going with Dante Moore again and again. So I wonder what the QB situation is. If it's Rodgers for a lot of the game and he's throwing for 300 yards, but like a score, what are the Huskies doing in this game? Because I do think this is, despite how hot the Bruins are playing, I don't want to get in there all cocky and confident. Deshaun Foster can do that. That team can have that swagger in practice when they go run up and they're getting hooping and hollering. But I kind of look at it and say, if Washington protects whoever is playing quarterback, and they can sling it around the football field and get a couple of yards, a lot better than Rutgers, a lot better than how Nebraska played, and a lot better than what Iowa trotted out there. This could be the toughest passing attack UCLA faces since, what am I thinking? Maybe Oregon, right? Penn State was all right. It's not like Minnesota did a lot of things, but they still had a nice game plan to change things in the second half. This, for lack of a better term, this is the best team UCLA's faced, I think, at the quarterback position in the passing game, I think, since the Oregon game. And yes, Penn State did something different. They're more physical. Drew Aller is, the most polarizing quarterback to debate, arguably, in the Big Ten or most of college football, whether he merits super good talented or is he whatever, right? A miniature version of what the J.J. McCarthy debate is last year, but you see how much he meant to Michigan after looking at this year's Michigan team. Now, Rodgers, I think, is the main guy for this Washington team. Now, the Bruins are physical. They can get home. Are they doing well-timed blitzes? Then okay. But if it's sit back and throw 3 times, LSU literally did that to a victory in Baton Rouge. All right? 3 straight passes or, mix in a run. It would suck. Drop back, and if you convert, that has been the weakness for UCLA this year. And the teams that can convert 3rd and long or do it just enough, if the UCLA offense is scuffling, then that is when UCLA has been in danger this year. I hope that's not the case. We'll talk a little bit more about it next on Locked On UCLA. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5. And if you win, you get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all on the same page. So check out whether you have a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to view the live play-by-play. It's all on the same page. You place your live bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet as a new customer. FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, cruising on here, UCLA, Washington. This is one of those big games for each team that could decide a bowl berth, all right? Now, as confident as UCLA fans can be heading into that USC game, with how USC is scuffling, heading into a quarterback change during their bye week and now into the Nebraska game. Hopefully Nebraska knocks off USC, and then the Bruins could keep SC not even bowl eligible, but that's too many things at once. UCLA and Washington, these are 2 teams fighting for a bowl berth and bowl eligibility. Washington is Oregon next on the road in Eugene with a bye prior to that, but this is their best opportunity to solidify getting to a bowl with 6 wins. Now, UCLA, they've got 2-3, and maybe you're banking that Fresno State game, which has not been a bankable win in quite a few years, more than a decade and a half for UCLA, unfortunately, right now with their losing streak to the Bulldogs. But this year, with the way the enthusiasm, everything's going for UCLA, it looks like it could be a bankable win. So it seems like all UCLA has to do to maybe get to a bowl is split one of these next two games coming up. Now, from a heart of heart fan, from a heart of a fan, obviously UCLA, if you're going to pull everybody, be like, hey, we gladly sacrifice giving bowl berths to Washington to beat the living daylights out of USC and embarrass them and finally do it at the Rose Bowl for the first time since 2018, which was the first year of the Chip Kelly era. Ironically, all these teams, UCLA, USC, have been winning the road games from 2020 on. UCLA SC has been decided by who wins on the road. Obviously, that focus is coming in 2 weeks' time, but the Bruins have to wrap up the road schedule with some pizzazz. Be like, hey, we've seen all these tough road environments. We're used to getting to Seattle, going to Seattle. It's been a couple of years, been a few years. This game is very important. And with that big Iowa win, a win against Washington could make another statement, right? Because Washington went out, they beat Iowa. UCLA has gone on the road. They won on the East Coast. They won in the Midwest. And then if you want to prove that you can be a true warrior on the road in Big Ten play, you can go win on every coast, every part of this Big Ten map they throw on TV. You go to the East Coast, you beat Rutgers. You go beat Nebraska. You go beat Washington. You beat an Iowa team at home that seemingly had more fans than the Bruins, even though I think it was more than 50-50 in favor of UCLA fans, and you sent those Hawkeye fans home disappointed. If you can hold serve coast to coast in different Big Ten / former Pac-12 rival football environments, all in packed houses, mind you, every single one of these previous 5 road games have been sellouts. So they're playing in front of humongous crowds. Yes, maybe that Penn State crowd early was a little lackadaisical, but that's still 110. That's still 100,000 plus screaming, 100,000 plus screaming at LSU in humidity in the South. UCLA's handled it all. And now cold weather Friday night Pacific Northwest battle with UCLA in a full week's rest. They're not having a short week. They're getting this Friday to Friday, which, I'd rather than play on Saturday, but if they're going to have a week's worth of rest, that's good. That can mean a lot more. Winning a bowl, winning on every coast. I'm not sure every single team could actually say that, right? If UCLA says, hey, we can win road games in the West Coast, the Midwest, and the East Coast, that's not something that Ohio State can say. There's only a few teams that can say we traveled across the country, went to the Midwest. USC couldn't do that. They couldn't beat Maryland. They couldn't beat Minnesota. UCLA went to Nebraska. Boom. Went to Rutgers. Now if they can beat Washington, they can get that trifecta in year one of Deshaun Foster, when the whole offseason, everybody was just talking about road stadium, big, cool, lots of travel. And to go 4 wins on the road, that would be spectacular. All right. You obviously banked that Hawaii game as a win, which the Bruins struggled, but got it done. But then to go beat 3 separate Big Ten games on the road in conference play, that would be, hey, they not like us. And that's where we're going to wrap up this Locked On UCLA podcast. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight. Let's go. Let's get ready. Let's go, UCLA fans. I'm tired. I'm getting everything. I'm whacking. Who knows what's going on? I'm all over the place. Need some sleep. We got football, basketball, everything. All right. Everything going on crazy here. All Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's rock and roll. Like, comment, subscribe. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.